What's going on, guys? Ants Trades back with another video. Overall, not the week that we were looking for. We bled on very, very low volume. SPY relatively low volume, AMC very low volume, APE very low volume, and just absolutely bleeding all week. Beginning of the week looked like it could have been exciting for AMC. Then we saw the halt that kind of killed our momentum. It is what it is. Still things look good to me. I'm still bullish as fuck. Nothing really changed. We all know there's some serious manipulation that goes on, and we saw a 40% pullback on AMC, but it actually turns out to be a very technical move. So there's really not much to worry about there. Of course, it would have been awesome to see AMC just rip to the upside, on Monday, but the halt kind of killed momentum, and we'll get into that in a little bit. Again, I can admit when I'm wrong, and I was wrong about dates. I'll never make that mistake again. I'm never going to give my price targets are the same. My price targets have not changed. Dates, I'm never going to speak on dates again. I'm just going to give my TA. In my opinion, we're squeezing sooner rather than later. So, with all that being said, let's jump into the video. We're going to start with SPY. Not really the best looking week for SPY. Again, relatively low volume week. SPY is kind of trying to make a decision here. We've been bouncing in between support and resistance between 406, 410, and 416. Local highs somewhere around 418, and then from there we've just been seeing ups and downs in between support and resistance, and ended up closing the week around 408. Still looks bullish to me. I mentioned this, I think, in my last video as well. SPY's either going to hold support here at 406 and continue on reclaiming the bull trend and continue to the upside, or it's going to break 406, come down to 400, find some support there. If that breaks, you might see SPY retest the descending broadening wedge breakout. I find that very unlikely. I think at the absolute most, you come down to 400. I still don't even see that happening. Now, I could be wrong, but 406 looks like it's holding up pretty well. So yesterday came down to 406, you got a wick to it, bounced off of it, and then today as well, you wicked a little bit further deeper under 406 and then closed. You found the bounce there and closed somewhere around 408. To me, it still looks great. I have nothing really to complain about. I'm still bullish here. So really quickly into the EMAs. I changed the background of my charting, so this might make EMAs a little bit easier to see. Here's your 50, and here's your 200, and your 50 is on its way. I mentioned that there was a possibility of seeing a golden cross this week on SPY. We didn't see it, primarily due to the downside that we've seen. But we are very close here. I mean, there's more than likely we're going to see a golden cross next week. Probably later, like late in the week, Thursday, Friday maybe. But it's on its way. And with that, we should see some more upward momentum in SPY. Again, still bullish here. Take the EMAs off really quickly. I just want to pull up RSI on SPY. Now, here's your RSI. And from the local highs that we saw around 418, SPY approached the oversold range at about 70, and then from there we've seen some downside. Caught a catch on 406, bounced there, closed the week around 408, and RSI is sitting around 56 right now. A little bit of a cool off in RSI. Overall, I think it looks great. No complaints. Still bullish as fuck. So, really quickly jumping into the 4-hour. I mentioned this yesterday as well. Not yesterday, my last video. That it was possible to break our bull trend, and it looks like SPY has reclaimed, closed the week around 408, broke below it slightly, and then came back up and reclaimed it. To me, it looks good. I really have no complaints here. I will say it looks like it's forming some kind of a descending broadening wedge here. I wouldn't be surprised to see SPY trade in this wedge here next week. I am expecting AMC to have more or less a sideways week next week as well. So that would align with SPY, just bouncing up and down in this range here. I would love to see SPY maintain its bull trend and continue upwards. I think that's what we're going to see. So that is that. And with that being said, yeah, overall on SPY, I'm still bullish. I still think it looks great. No complaints. Not the week that we wanted, but the uptrend is still intact. Relatively low volume. Again, I'll jump into the daily for this. Again, you have a 2-year-long descending broadening wedge, and you're seeing some, from this bottom here, we're seeing higher highs, higher lows, and we broke out of a 2-year-long downtrend on SPY. Guys, it's bullish as fuck. There's no other way to say it. Looks great. No complaints. With that being said, let's jump into AMC. And I'm going to start with the bars pattern. I want to touch on this. I'll be very fast about it, and then we'll get into everything else. The bars pattern has followed from the breakdown in the flag. I have to change some of these trend lines up. These colors are a little crazy now. You can't really see the white, but from the flag breakdown in November, the bars pattern has followed perfectly. I ran through it in my stream. You guys have seen me do it a million times. It ran through this perfectly up until, of course, up until we broke out. Now, here's where we were, where we bottomed out here for 10 days, found a gap up, came up to the top of the wedge, got rejected, retraced, broke it, gapped up again, and then you see some more upside. Now, this is the candle that we were in, and we got halted around 7:30, and then from there, we've seen downside. Now, I did mention that it would be hard for me to predict the price movement following the breakout here, and you know, my predictions have been pretty off. I could admit, up until this point where we broke out and saw some upside, my predictions were pretty on point. Following the halt, I was not expecting to bleed 40% here during the week. From the high of this halt all the way down to the bottom here, it was about a 40% move. I was not expecting that whatsoever, but it is what it is, and it actually turns out this is a very technical move here. I mean, you have a 2-year long descending wedge. You get rejected, retrace, break it, gap up, see some upside, and then we get halted, and now we have come back down to retest the wedge, retest the descending resistance, now support. We came all the way back down to it, and we're retesting our breakout now. That's a very technical move. That was a possibility from the beginning. I believe I mentioned that, and I'm not surprised to see it. I wouldn't have been surprised to see, you know, continuation to the upside either, but this is not bad at all. So with that being said, let me just take the bars pattern off really quick. Where is it? All right. So, yeah, this halt threw me. I was a little bit confused at first. I didn't really understand. I mean, obviously, you can expect halts in the stock. We all know that. But I wasn't really expecting this halt. And, you know, it turns out it actually makes sense from a technical standpoint. And I'm going to really quickly jump into a split screen and show you guys what I was looking at. So at first, and I'll jump into the 1 hour for this. Give me 1 second. Following our breakout, and again, this trend line should be lower. It should be running through this. Following the breakout, we gap up, and then we start trading in this range here in a bullish channel. And I mentioned that. Very similar to what you have over here prior to the January squeeze. You trade in a bullish channel, forming more or less a W, and then you break it to the upside, and then you just start ripping to the upside here. And that's what we had here at first. And then, you know, we break out of it, start ripping to the upside, and we get halted. Now, this halt threw me. It did. I was very confused at first. I didn't understand what was going on, especially when we came back down. I'm like, okay, maybe we find a bounce here at the bottom of this, and then we can just continue to the downside from there. At first, I was a little bit confused, but upon further examination, I looked at what happened when we broke out in May, prior to the June run up, and it turns out the breakout pattern is following very similarly to how we broke out in May. Now, I mentioned again that once we broke out of this, it would be very hard for me to predict the movement, and it is. I'm never going to be perfect on a day-to-day basis, and especially following a breakout of a 2-year long descending wedge, I'm not going to be perfect with my predictions on price action. But really quickly, I want to show you guys this. I threw some highlighters here because I thought it would be a little bit easier to visualize the move here. And this is on the 4 hour. So here is May, prior to the June rip, where you break out, and then this is the movement that you get, and it's very similar over here as well. You have some higher highs, you have some higher lows, indicated by the green and the red. Same as over here. You have your hold here. You have some higher highs, higher lows. And then you start seeing some downside. And then you come all the way to the bottom here. And you're forming, it's a bottoming action. More or less it's a W here. And then you start ripping to the upside. Now, the move is very similar. This is just exaggerated. This pullback here is very exaggerated. It's on very low volume at that. Very exaggerated move, and it took us all the way back to our breakout point. The descending resistance, now support, it took us all the way back to the bottom of it. It didn't over here. It doesn't have to play out the exact same way, but it's a similar move. So what am I expecting for next week? Not really much. I think we're going to probably trade mostly flat here in this range. With the close that we got after hours yesterday, we are actually sitting 1 cent above the wedge here. 1 cent above the wedge. I'm going to jump back into the full screen. I'm going to pull all these off. Bear with me for 1 second. All right, that should be good. So with our close after hours yesterday, looking at a Monday open, we are actually, believe it was 489. You're sitting 1 cent or even right on top of our descending trend line here. So what am I expecting for this week? A very boring week. I think it's going to be very low volume. We're going to be trading in some kind of parallel channel here. I'm not even going to bother giving you a range, but I do believe we're going to be trading, kind of rounding out, carving out a bottom here in some kind of a parallel channel, maybe bouncing back and forth, forming some kind of W here for the entire week. I'm not saying it has to play out that way. You could just start ripping. I think it's going to be more likely to see a very slow, low volume week where you're just bouncing range bound here, carving a bottom, and then into the following week we might see some upward action. Again, we could just find a bounce here and start ripping to the upside. I just think the trading sideways scenario is more likely. I don't think we're coming back down to the bottom of this trend line of our support here. I mentioned this a million times. If we do, I have to wear a dress on live stream. There were some weirdos in my chat that wanted to test my conviction and said if we do come back down to the bottom of the trend line here, I would have to wear a dress on live stream. Absolute weirdos. I agreed to do it because I don't see a world where we come back to the bottom of this trend. So they just were testing my conviction, and I more or less made a bet that I would wear a dress if we came back down here. So I don't think we're coming back down here, guys. I think we're going to form some kind of bottoming action here, carving this out, establishing support on the previous resistance, now support, before we start ripping to the upside and see our squeeze. And okay, that is that. Let me just see if I missed anything in my notes here. Now, yeah, that's pretty much that. That's what I'm expecting for next week. Really quickly, one more thing. And I thought this would be interesting to see. I mean, we all know this is a very manipulated stock, but seeing the manipulation in front of your face says a lot. So I marked some highlighter dots here in red, and these are indicating halts that we've seen throughout AMC's price history since January, the first squeeze on the stock, and it aligns with my my upper descending resistance line here. See, you have one in June, you have one in March here that slowed us down, one off the top here, two here, again, one's right off of your resistance here, one here. Now, the difference with the halt that we saw on Monday is that this was the first halt that we've seen above this descending resistance line. And it actually makes sense to see this halt because now we are coming back down to test the breakout, which is a very technical move. I'm not surprised to see that at all. Keep in mind that these halts, you could think of this upper descending resistance line, right? Think of above this line is just extremely volatile territory for AMC. You get above this, price action starts to get very crazy. You're looking at a squeeze, which is exactly why we got halted again here. And now we're just coming back down to test it. So Pretty much, this is what you're looking at. This volatility zone, it gets lower by the day. Every single day, this volatility zone, the number gets lower and lower and lower, approaching zero. And just from a fundamental standpoint on my wedge, it doesn't really make much sense to come back down to the bottom. So what can we expect is we are going to establish support here and then continue to the upside. I've been asked a million times, if they could just hold it whenever they want, like why won't they just keep doing that? They'll hold it as much as they want until they can, until they let this thing run. It has to run at some point. There's too much buying pressure in the stock. This thing is eventually going to run. And I mentioned this too, is that these halts that we've seen throughout the 2 years that we've been trading in this wedge here, these halts, you could probably argue, is to condition us to expect downside following a halt. Every halt that we've seen has been followed by some absolutely massive downside. So you could argue that when we start squeezing, we're going to see halts, and retail is going to be like, oh shit, we're halted, and then expect downside and possibly sell. So guys, keep in mind, when we do squeeze, we are going to see halts on the way up. So you could probably argue that's what this was the whole time, conditioning retail to expect downside. When they see halts, they'll keep halting it until they let it run, pretty much is what I'm saying. So that's pretty much that. Everything overall looks great to me. I'm still bullish as fuck. Still think we're squeezing. I'm not giving dates. I think we're squeezing sooner rather than later. And that's pretty much that. I'm not going to bother pulling up the RSI, but pretty much on every single time frame for AMC, the RSI is either oversold or approaching oversold around 30. So it looks good. Very low volume, low RSI. Technical pullback from a breakout of a 2-year long descending wedge. Now testing the breakout point as support. Overall, guys, bullish as fuck. I still believe we're squeezing. Not giving dates, like I just said. Really quickly into APE. APE had a very bloody week as well. Not surprised, as AMC did, and SPY saw some downside too. Looking at the volume profile, though, you have some increasing volume from the breakout point of the neckline of the inverse head and shoulders. You see some gaps and some upside on increasing volume in the green. Find your top, and from there, you've just been absolutely bleeding. We actually filled this gap on the daily. Been absolutely bleeding on decreasing red volume. Decreasing volume, guys, on a pullback, I've said it a million times, I'll say it again, is bullish. There is another gap on the daily to around 190, 192-ish. I don't think we're going to fill that. I think we're going to see a bounce. That's pretty much it. I'm really not going to bother going too much into APE. AMC pretty much speaks for APE. So maybe in APE you get some sideways action as well, some ups and downs here, trading sideways, range bound here, maybe some upside, maybe a slightly green week for APE. Slightly green week for AMC, possibly. More or less, I'm expecting some sideways action for both next week. Still waiting on SPY to make a decision whether or not it's going to continue to the upside or come crashing back down to its decently broadening wedge. Maybe find a bounce there and then continue to the upside. Regardless, everything still looks bullish to me. I still believe we're squeezing. I'm still bullish as fuck. And that's pretty much that. Had a great time live streaming this week with you guys. Thank you guys so much for all the support. I just want to say that again. Thank you guys for everything. It really means a lot. It does. With the amount of shit you have to put up in this community, seeing that you have people on your side, it's a great thing to see. Especially when you have shills on every platform. I already regret making a Twitter. I haven't even opened my Twitter because I already know what I'm going to be seeing when I open my Twitter. So. Every platform I'm getting shit from people, even YouTubers in the same community. And I'm not going to mention names, but YouTubers in the same community that are holding stocks in the meme basket, that's as far as I'm going to go. I'm not even going to mention names, are bashing when they're holding a stock in the meme basket that usually runs in tandem with AMC. So it really doesn't make too much sense to me. So, I really appreciate the support, guys, and that's pretty much that. And as I'm finishing my video, Max is starting to attack me. So I'm going to end it here. Overall outlook, guys, I still think we're bullish as fuck. I still think everything looks great. And I'm excited for the coming weeks. Next week, I'm expecting pretty much to be a boring week. But, the coming weeks after, we should see some very exciting movement. So with all that being said, Hope you guys enjoy the weekend. Let's go Eagles, and I will see you guys next week.